Welcome to Momivate Momversations on Win-Win Women platform, where we women gather to care, connect, and collaborate. Truly a win-win for us all. I'm your hostess, Regan Barnes, mom of 8 and founder of the nonprofit organization Momivate that empowers you to elevate your mothering experience. We welcome you into the Momivate community, or Mom Unity, as we like to say. We are moms united in our conviction that motherhood is a practical and meaningful way to make the world a better place. Join us and become a Mom Unity member. It's free on our website, momivate.org. Together, we'll constructively evolve motherhood into the 21st century, meeting the needs of our children while elevating our mothering experiences. Here at Momivate, we answer the question, what do moms do? With this uplifting statement: moms raise up society. That's right, not just our own kids, but all of society, including ourselves. Raise Up is an acronym jam packed with the far reaching impact of intentional mothers who strive to improve and progress, knowing that motherhood is a multidimensional occupation. We're not just chauffeurs and short order cooks. As we take on the repetitive, loving work that shapes our children, it shapes us and it shapes society. The impact of our efforts ripples out beyond our homes because as moms, we are uniquely positioned to influence society one-on-one. Today, we're going to focus on the schedules and systems category of this acronym. We're going to get even more narrow and dig deep into the specific subcategory of family activities and traditions. So I'll stop sharing my slides and just share with you, I bet at this moment, having heard the word tradition, you are probably, starting to sing that song. We all know it, even though it's older than we are, but it's from The Fiddler on the Roof. Tradition. That chorus just comes through the decades because we can all relate to the concepts that Tevye says and then enforces with that chant. Tradition. So Tevye is talking about how life tries to keep its balance, even though we all are kind of like a fiddler on the roof, scratching out what's supposed to be a nice little song. But it gets a bit tricky up there on the roof trying to keep our balance. Tevye says, we have traditions for everything: how to sleep, how to eat, how to work, how to wear clothes. And he says, for instance, that we always keep our heads covered and we always wear a little prayer shawl. It shows our constant devotion to God. And you may ask, how did this tradition get started? I'll tell you, I don't know, but it's a tradition. And because of our traditions, every one of us knows who he is and what God expects him to do. So that's the actual monologue. Like, I went and looked up the script. So whether or not you believe in God, this line of every one of us knows who he is and what God expects him to do, that could be understood to mean how traditions instill a sense of self, a sense of identity, an overall purpose about life in general. And so let's take this and apply this to us as moms. What are some of our family traditions? Do they fulfill that goal of giving our families a strong sense of self and sense of identity and purpose? I like to think of traditions as the wrapping on the gift of life. So let's move away from the fiddler on the roof metaphor. That's a little bit harder to relate to because we just don't see fiddlers trying to balance on roofs anymore. But gifts, now that a lot of times we even associate gifts as part of traditions like at Christmas or birthdays. So we can really visualize this. The wrapping on the gift adds a little excitement. It keeps the gift from being ho-hum. It holds the contents of the gift together in a nice little package, and the ribbon just makes it lovely. I learned a lot about giving gifts from my mother-in-law. She has a talent for gift giving. One time she was kind of soliloquizing about how important the wrapping part is. I think it was in context of giving gifts to her grandchildren on their birthdays. Now, she actually takes them out shopping ahead of time and lets them pick out the present. And when that shopping excursion is over, she just drops the child off at home empty-handed. She keeps the item that they chose. She goes back to her house, wraps it lovingly, and gives it to them on their actual birthday or their actual birthday party. Even though they already know what's inside, she's giving them not just the present inside, but the increased anticipation, seeing that toy again and the joy of unwrapping it. And I feel like traditions in our families are a lot like that. They can take a life that is sometimes otherwise a bit mundane and repetitive, and you already know generally what to expect, but they add this sense of joy and anticipation and excitement. So the fun of being the mom in your family is that you get to decide what traditions you're going to include in your family culture. You might have traditions that you grew up with and that you found valuable and that gave you that sense of identity. And the man you marry, he likely grew up with parallel traditions, maybe based on similar aspects of your shared society, like if both of your families celebrated Christmas. There will be some overlapping traditions, and yet there might be some that compete a little bit. Just as an example, my husband always ate pinch cake as a child for breakfast on Christmas morning. While in my family, breakfast on Christmas morning was egg sausage casserole. So we had to decide together which of those traditions we would carry on. And there have been Christmas mornings when both pinch cake and egg sausage casserole are available. You might, so, you know, there's the traditions you grew up with, the traditions of your husband's family. There might be traditions you hear about among other families that, you know, maybe they share it on social media and it's very inspiring to you and you determine that you want to include that. That actually kind of brings to mind the elf on the shelf and how many naughty ways he brings in the Christmas season with all his excitement. But and anyways, I think considering establishing a new tradition in your family can kind of be a funny thing to think about, because I mean, the very sense of the word tradition is things that have already been established, that have been going on for ages. And that your role is simply in the continuing or perpetuating of that, not necessarily starting a new tradition. But I just want to give you permission. Go against the rules a little bit sometimes if you really feel that there is an activity that you can introduce to your family that will serve those purposes of giving your children that sense of identity and excitement and purpose. Then by all means, you're the mom. You've got the power. Establish that new tradition. At this point in my life, I am facing the fact that my children will be marrying into other families. And starting their own traditions, and they might not choose to continue with some of the traditions I've worked so hard to instill in their lives. And I just want to be public and say, that's okay. That is the fun of starting your own family and feeling that sense of power to do something your own way. And also consider taking an old tradition and molding it for yourselves, customizing it. So you're not necessarily rejecting the tradition altogether, but you're taking the part of it that still applies now that you have a new family situation and circumstance, and you're moving forward with that freshly tweaked tradition. So what are the categories and examples of traditions? They can be traditions based on your culture, like the society that you grew up in. So, for instance, celebrating the country that you are living in. Maybe it has a historical holiday of significance. America, for instance, will celebrate July 4th every year, usually in pretty specific ways, like parades and fireworks. And so there's going to be large scale cultural examples like that. But there's also the small scale things as well. Maybe the anniversary of your wedding and how that can be influenced by your culture. A lot of traditions are rooted in religion. I feel like the very definition of that example is Christmas. And I find that to be very curious because, in recent years, there has been a general decline in Christianity, but Christmas is at no lack of traditions. They continue to persist. Now, some of them have been tweaked to the point where people might not consider Christmas even to be a Christian holiday anymore. But the fact that so many of those things continue and persist nonetheless is, something for sociologists to write research papers on, right? So I just want to bring this all together with the intentional aspect of it, that this conscientious effort that you as the mom put in determining which traditions to carry on or maybe start, and then the aspect of actually putting in the effort to make them happen. So basically, Momivate teaches several principles of how to establish schedules and systems in your household, and vision is the first of those principles that we teach. So you need to decide what you want for your family, what purpose it will serve. Decide on traditions that carry out that desire of what your family is going to look like, and then really just reach for that purpose. Waking up and getting through the day to day doesn't require much more than just following your bodily biological functions. But when it comes to traditions, making a day that stands out, like a day that is different from the rigmarole, a day that you want to be memorable and exciting, that, maybe it's a holiday or a birthday, whatever it is, it requires more effort. And in a lot of cases, it requires that effort in advance. So that's a big part of what we do as moms. We think about it, we plan, we consider what resources we need to gather to make it a success. We might need to individualize it for our family specifics. And of course, this kind of planning has to vary from one tradition to the next, even within the same holiday. For example, one of our family's traditions related to Christmas is to watch the movie It's a Wonderful Life on Christmas Eve. You might be familiar with that. If not, I highly recommend it. It's about Clarence and how he's an angel and he wants so badly to earn his wings. And so he sets about blessing the life of a man who has had some really difficult situations come about, and he's considering dying by suicide. So Clarence helps him through mostly by changing his perspective as opposed to actually changing his circumstances. And at the culmination of the movie, they're celebrating Christmas. And so that's why it, in our brains, is a Christmas movie. Now, watching a movie on Christmas Eve doesn't really take a lot of planning on our part. But of course, there are other Christmas traditions that are going to be much more planning intensive. We celebrate what we call Christmas Adam. It comes the day before Christmas Eve because Adam came before Eve. So this is usually a children-centered Christmas party. Our kids get to invite their cousins and friends, and they bring what we call previously loved gifts. Toys that child. So this isn't go out and buy a new toy. It's just kind of a toy rotation type of thing. And they bring those already wrapped. That just is a throwback to the idea of traditions being the wrapping on the gift of life. And then there's like little stations that the kids can go around to where they can play a little Christmas oriented game called Don't Eat Rudolph. You might want to look that up. It's fun. They can cut out snowflakes at one of the stations. They can put together a little graham cracker, or gingerbread houses, but they're not gingerbread, they're graham crackers. So that kind of thing. And it's just, again, it's the gathering of all of those resources, the graham crackers and the paper and scissors at the one station and the whatnot, everything going on in the different places. So that takes quite a bit more planning. And of course, the different kinds of foods that we eat and the putting together that grocery list that's outside of our normal grocery list. So, all right. So I really want to encourage you as you are taking on this role of motherhood, of establishing the traditions, carrying out the traditions, get out your calendar. Your calendar is an excellent tool to help you be deliberate in your traditions. Calendars can help us with the visualization. They help us know what holidays are coming up. Many calendars are already marked with nationally observed holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving and July 4th. But there's also holidays that might be specific to you, your religion, your family, birthdays, anniversaries, and you just have to think ahead about it, mark it on the calendar, be prepared to implement those traditions. And that implementation is another one of our principles that we teach here at Momivate. It's kind of the ready, set, go. And eventually the time does come, right? After that visualization and that planning and that calendaring to carry out the vision. The day will come along, and it's exciting and fun to be the producer of a memory shaping day for your family. Now, of course, somewhat paradoxically, there are still the day in and day out parts of life that need to happen alongside all of these little extras, especially during young motherhood, and the baby still needs a nap, or the diapers still get stinky and need changing, or the toddler is still potty training, or the laundry still needs doing. Kids still need refereeing during their squabbles. But overall, having the aspects of the day that are different than the norm is really part of that fabric of tradition. It's like the ribbon on the gift. So one nice example that I like to share is about a family I knew whose their birthday tradition for the children started with filling that child's bedroom with balloons while the child was still sleeping, so that they woke up to a bedroom full of balloons. Now, at one point in this family's life, they sold all their belongings, including their house, and bought an RV and traveled around the country for a considerable amount of time. I think it was like 2 years. Now, that is quite the upheaval of the norm, and living in these unusual circumstances can be, well, kind of difficult in and of itself, right? But in the midst of all of that upheaval, they would still do that tradition for their kids, that the kids didn't have their individual bedrooms anymore, but they would fill up the RV with balloons. And that tradition and carrying it on, even in the midst of a different lifestyle, gave a real sense of stability to those kids. And I think that following through with traditions, even when there are obstacles, is part of the nature of the tradition and the word tradition, and it can help it serve its purpose of bringing stability to those kids and giving them a sense of security. On the flip side of that, one of our family's birthday traditions is breakfast in bed. And one reason I think kids adore this tradition is because it breaks a major family rule, which is food stays in the kitchen. So to get this treat that's kind of against the rules, it's kind of a fun aspect of the tradition. And I think some of our holidays take on this element, like Halloween, for instance. If you normally have the rule that you only eat one piece of candy, but then maybe on Halloween you get to binge until your tummy hurts. And then hopefully your kids will believe you when you tell them that eating too much candy isn't good for them. But another side of family traditions to consider might be activities that don't necessarily fall on holidays, but are part of the family culture. So like vacations, for instance, or attending church on a certain day of the week, or sports-oriented families might have a sense of tradition based on athletics and which child is in which sport during which season of the year, and maybe attending their games, cheering them on is part of the family fabric, and brings to mind the Dear Evan Hansen song of the right way to break in a glove, and that dad sees that as part of his role. So now, as scientists have gotten involved in the concept of strong families and how important it is to society as a whole, one of the family activities that they are promoting as a result of all of this research is family dinner hour. So as opposed to letting everyone eat whatever they want, maybe having a bunch of TV dinners that they can warm up, and eating it whenever they want, because our schedules do take us lots of different places. I've got kids who work, things like that. Eating it wherever they want, maybe in front of different TVs around the house. That's all very divisive and does not pull a family together. So I get it, that it requires a lot of effort, especially if you've kind of fallen into that habit of everybody just eat whenever, whatever, wherever. But it is worth it. It teaches our kids so many lessons. It's like a little microcosm of situations right there at the dinner table. Having to try new things, having to learn how to appropriately reject something, how to show interest in someone else's day as you kind of chat together and discuss, problems you're having. It gives you the ability to decompress, detox a little bit. Everybody's gone off to work and school, and now they're back together, and we can show compassion. We can brainstorm solutions. And even in the situations where there's not necessarily a solution, we can be the comfort that they might need. Traveling and going on vacations is another aspect of traditions. for our family, it doesn't often mean traveling. Just kind of having time off together, getting away. Or I have a sister-in-law who's great at doing staycations, where they still live at their house, but they make a point to have several different activities and, maybe local adventurous type places. I don't know, boondocks or I don't know which ones are local to here and which ones you've heard of, but little amusement parks, that kind of thing that are nearby but aren't part of your normal life. So, but just relaxing, not having the same kinds of duties and other things that take us away from each other. So, like I mentioned, because my family's so large, traveling is rather cost prohibitive, but we are blessed to have access to a cabin that belongs to the extended family. And it gives us a place to escape the heat, get a different set of walls around us for a while. And of course, there are always chores to be done, right? But they're slightly different and a little less intense due to the change in surroundings. And there are traditions associated with that cabin that we purposefully carry on. One of the grandfathers who owned it in the past loved M&Ms. So we always bring a couple big bags of M&Ms and let the kids eat them without asking. He also loved root beer floats. So we bring the ingredients for that and designate one of the nights to be root beer float night as a tradition in honor of this grandpa. Now, okay, so as you've implemented, you've followed through with traditions, you might decide that you need to make adjustments. Now, I used to teach childbirth education, and one of the concepts I taught was the idea of a birth plan. Now, of all things, birth is one of those that you can't really plan. Like, there are just so many unknowns and various dynamics that are just wait and see. And so you have to go into the birth with the attitude of, okay, the important thing is that the baby arrives safely and that the mother overall has a positive experience where she feels ownership of the experience and feels like she's in charge and has choices. But really, the details have to come as they come based on the myriad changes that might occur due to so many circumstances that remain up in the air until that moment of birth. So I think traditions are a bit like this. You just have to have the general plan in place and then be able to pivot based on things that are outside of your control. If you're too rigid and stiff about things, then you lose some of the wonder, magic, and excitement of it all in the midst of creating that stress of it has to happen a certain way. But again, if you go in with no plan whatsoever, you also put the wonder and excitement and magic at risk because you haven't harnessed that power of visualization and gathering the tools and resources and people that you'll need and want to bring your vision into reality. So yes, being able to bend a bit as you go and keep the overall goals in mind is crucial to a positive experience in the end. Just really ask yourself what factors will make this birth, or in this case, this tradition, successful. Does it have to be that every detail is carried out, even at the expense of a child's self-esteem? Or can we relax a little and let that child contribute in their own manner and value that contribution, even if it's imperfect? So I'm just here at the very end of my time with you, but I do want to share the funny story about a mom who was just really wrapped up in her Thanksgiving traditions and needed everything to be perfect. She had invited the extended family over and she had her child in charge of setting the table, and they had put out paper napkins. And she was like, no, it can't be paper napkins. It has to be the special napkins. Now, that child really had no idea what she was talking about, but he knew that there were special napkins under her bathroom cabinet. They were called sanitary napkins. And so, yeah, that'll be the little chuckle that I leave you with. And how that definitely was a memorable Thanksgiving. Now, I do want to thank you for tuning in today. This is the end of the recording. If you are watching this as a recording, please know that this show is actually live and we would love to have you join us, because after we turn off the recording, that's where the real magic happens and people can join the conversation and ask questions and interact for that second half hour. And that's how Win-Win Women is unique. We care, we connect, and we collaborate. Thank you.